I never thought my wedding day could be this terrible. It wasn't because my wedding dress was so tight that it squeezed my 6-month pregnant belly, nor because my swollen feet ached after hours of standing and greeting guests. It was because I was sitting silently in the middle of a lavish wedding, where everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Except for me. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, the lively music, all of it only made me feel like an outsider, left behind in a strange dream I had never wished for. What hurt even more was that my groom, Ethan, was sitting 2 tables away, holding yet another glass of whiskey, completely indifferent to my presence. I had once loved Ethan more than anything, but in this moment, as I sat here, the feeling of being abandoned washed over me like a massive wave, drowning every beautiful illusion I had ever had about this marriage. I gently placed my hand on my belly, where my 2 babies were moving restlessly. Despite wearing a gorgeous wedding gown, I couldn't hide the fact that I was carrying twins. That was the reason we had to rush this wedding, or at least that was what I had believed. But my mother-in-law Margaret had delayed the wedding multiple times with countless excuses that I couldn't argue against. During my first trimester, she said the timing wasn't good and insisted we wait. When I reached my 4th month, she claimed Ethan was too busy with work to plan a wedding. By the time my pregnancy was too obvious to hide, she used the excuse that everything had to be perfectly prepared. I had grown exhausted from waiting, but I still tried to convince myself that she only wanted the best for her son. But now, as I sat in my own wedding reception, I realized just how foolish I had been. Margaret was beaming, standing in the middle of a group of powerful, high society women, raising her glass in a toast as if this was her personal victory. I didn't know exactly what she thought of me, but I understood one thing clearly: I had never truly been welcomed into this family. Every time I tried to get close to her, she maintained a cold distance, as if I were some pathetic outsider. I knew my background didn't compare to Ethan's family. I grew up in an ordinary home with no prestigious name, no inheritance. I had worked my way through school, supporting myself before I ever met Ethan. He, on the other hand, was born into wealth, surrounded by the finest things in life. I had believed that our love could overcome all these differences. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. I tried to take a sip of water to soothe my dry throat, but just as the glass touched my lips, I overheard a voice that made me freeze. "I honestly don't know what to do about this disaster anymore, Linda," Margaret's voice rang out. "Ethan has completely lost his mind bringing that girl here and getting her pregnant. I nearly fainted when I realized we'd have to go through with this wedding. But the worst part is, he keeps insisting he loves her." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My fingers tightened around the glass in my hand, gripping it so hard I feared it might shatter. Margaret continued, her voice dripping with insincere pity. "Honestly, who even knows if those children are really Ethan's? That girl grew up in some working-class neighborhood. No one knows anything about her past. She's probably used to deception by now." It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. My head buzzed, and I had to summon every ounce of strength to keep myself from bursting into tears. I steadied myself, stood up straight, and took a deep breath. I couldn't let her see me break. I took a few deliberate steps forward, making sure my heels clicked sharply against the floor, forcing her to turn around. The moment our eyes met, I saw a flicker of surprise cross her face, but she quickly regained her composure, putting on that same fake smile. "Charlotte, dear, you look so pale," she cooed, as if she hadn't just uttered those cruel words. "Let me have the driver take you home early. You need rest. You shouldn't overexert yourself." I stared straight into her eyes, feeling the anger rise like a tidal wave inside me. I could have confronted her, could have shouted, could have called her out in front of everyone. But I knew it wouldn't change a thing. If Ethan truly loved me, if he truly valued this family we were supposed to be building together, he should have been here, defending me. But he wasn't. He was sitting at a distant table laughing and drinking with his friends, completely oblivious to what was happening. I didn't say a word. I simply set my glass down, adjusted the heavy folds of my wedding dress, and turned away. As the doors to the wedding hall closed behind me, I knew one thing for certain. I no longer belonged here. I walked aimlessly, not knowing how far I had gone, until my legs went numb and my head spun with exhaustion. That night, I didn't return to the reception. I didn't go back to Ethan's family mansion either. Instead, I used the last bit of money in my purse to rent a small hotel room. Lying on the unfamiliar bed, still in my wedding dress, I gently placed my hands on my belly, feeling the faint movements of my growing babies. I had hoped Ethan would realize my absence, that he would search for me among the glittering banquet tables, call me in a panic, asking where I was. But no. My phone remained silent. I spent the entire night tossing and turning, lost in a whirlwind of thoughts. I had loved Ethan with all my heart. From the moment I met him in college, I had been drawn to his confidence, his humor, and that radiant smile. I had believed that Ethan loved me just as much. But now, looking back, I wasn't so sure anymore. In the days following the wedding, I tried to hold on to any sense of normalcy. But Ethan was no longer the man I had fallen in love with. At first, I told myself he was just stressed, burdened by work, by our rushed marriage, by the weight of impending fatherhood. But with each passing day, the distance between us only grew wider. He started coming home later than before. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all, making excuses about urgent work or meeting friends. When I asked him about it, Ethan would simply frown and tell me not to make a big deal out of it. As for Margaret, she didn't bother hiding her satisfaction as Ethan grew more distant from me. "My son has always been busy," she said, her voice full of hidden meaning. "Charlotte, you should be more understanding. Don't make Ethan feel trapped." I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what she was doing. Slowly but surely, she was encouraging Ethan to pull away from me. Margaret's poisonous words began to seep into Ethan's mind. I could see the way he looked at me change, as if he was questioning whether I truly deserved to be his wife. And the worst part? I didn't know how to stop it. I was carrying twins, and it wasn't an easy pregnancy. I was constantly exhausted, dizzy, my back aching to the point where I couldn't sleep. But instead of caring for me, Ethan only became more distant. By the 7th month, when the doctor warned that I was at risk of preterm labor, I was terrified. I called Ethan while he was at work, my voice trembling as I told him what was happening. I hoped he would rush home, hold me in his arms, and reassure me that everything would be okay. But his response felt like a heavy weight crushing my heart. "Charlotte, you need to take care of yourself. I can't be worrying about you all the time." I had no words. I simply hung up, staring at my phone, as silent tears streamed down my face. A few days later, in the middle of the night, I was hit with unbearable stomach pain. I tried calling Ethan, but his phone was off. The pain was so intense that I couldn't even drive myself to the hospital. Desperate, I called Margaret. But instead of showing concern, she responded coldly. "This is exactly why I told Ethan to think carefully before marrying you. Now deal with it yourself." I had truly been abandoned. I don't even remember how I made it to the hospital, only the sheer panic I felt when the doctor examined me and insisted that I needed to be closely monitored. I desperately hoped Ethan would come. But he never did. I lay there alone, listening to the steady beeping of the hospital machines, feeling as if the entire world had turned its back on me. After 3 weeks in the hospital, I was too exhausted to expect anything from Ethan anymore. I realized I had to be strong on my own, because I had no other choice. Then, on a stormy night, a sudden wave of excruciating pain hit me. The doctors rushed to prepare the delivery room, and I was completely alone. I had once imagined Ethan would be there, holding my hand, comforting me like any loving husband would. But as I looked around, all I saw were the unfamiliar faces of doctors and nurses. After hours of agony, I finally heard my children's first cries. 2 tiny babies. 2 little angels I had feared I wouldn't be able to take care of. But the moment I laid eyes on them, I knew I would do anything to protect them. No one came to visit me, no messages from Ethan, no calls from Margaret. When the nurse asked if I wanted to notify my husband, I simply shook my head. Ethan had chosen to abandon me, and from this moment on, I would no longer need him. 3 days after giving birth, I was discharged from the hospital. Ethan wasn't there to pick me up. Carrying my 2 newborns in my arms, I stepped out of the hospital doors with a heavy heart. I had no home to return to, I had no idea where to go, but one thing was certain, I was no longer the weak girl I once was. I had lost Ethan, I had lost the family I once thought I belonged to, but I still had my children. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take them away from me. I left the hospital, holding my 2 babies tightly as I walked through the biting cold of a December evening. Cars rushed past on the streets, streetlights flickering on as the sun dipped below the horizon. But I had nowhere to go. Ethan had abandoned me. Margaret didn't even pretend to care about her own grandchildren. Their mansion was no longer a place I could return to. I had no one to rely on. The little savings I had before marriage had nearly run out after weeks in the hospital. I clutched my babies close, fear creeping into my heart. But I knew I couldn't break down. I had picked myself up before, and I would do it again. As I fumbled with my nearly empty wallet, trying to book a taxi, a gentle voice spoke behind me. "You need some help." I turned around. A woman in a nurse's uniform stood there, her eyes filled with concern. I recognized her. She had taken care of me in my final days at the hospital. "I'm Rebecca," she introduced herself. "I saw you leaving with no one to pick you up. Are you okay?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to appear strong, but my voice still trembled. "I don't know where I'm going." Rebecca glanced at the two babies in my arms, then, without hesitation, she said, "We can't let you wander around in this cold. Come home with me. Stay for a while, at least until you figure out your next steps." I could hardly believe my ears. A stranger was willing to help me at this moment? I looked at Rebecca, and for the first time in months, I felt a small warmth from human kindness. I accepted. Rebecca lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city with her brother Matthew. When I stepped inside, the space was modest but cozy and tidy. I gently placed my babies in the cribs Rebecca quickly pulled out from her room. "You can stay as long as you need," Rebecca said, pouring me a cup of hot tea. "I don't have much, but I know how hard it is to be a single mother. We'll help you." I took the cup with my trembling hands, feeling the warmth spread through my fingers. But more than the tea, it was Rebecca's kindness that truly warmed me. Matthew was a quiet man, but he didn't show any annoyance at having 3 strangers in his home. He worked part-time at an auto repair shop and spent most of his free time helping Rebecca with household chores. I saw him carefully prepare meals, silently fix broken things around the apartment, never once complaining. In the first few days, I felt like a burden. But Rebecca and Matthew never let me feel that way for long. "You need to stand up for yourself, Charlotte," Rebecca said one evening as I sat watching my babies sleep. "You went to college, didn't you? I heard you were studying medicine." I nodded. "But I never finished my degree. I had to drop out when I got pregnant." Rebecca smiled softly. "Then go back. Don't let anyone stop you anymore." Her words were like a small spark in the darkness of my life. I had been so consumed by the pain of abandonment, so lost in mourning what I had lost, that I had forgotten I still had a future ahead of me. I couldn't let my life be defined by Ethan or Margaret. I had to take back control. Matthew helped me research financial aid programs for students in difficult circumstances. Thanks to Rebecca's support and some of her colleagues, I was able to return to school with a scholarship specifically for single mothers. And then, on a day I never expected, I met the man who would change my life. Matthew had a friend named Richard Walker. He was a successful businessman whom Matthew had once helped when his car broke down in the middle of the road a year ago. As it turned out, Richard was the CEO of a major healthcare company and had always wanted to find a way to repay Matthew. When he heard about my situation, Richard offered to help. "I don't do charity," he said bluntly, "but I believe in giving opportunities to those who deserve them. If you're serious about getting back into the medical field, I can help you find a part-time job at my company. It won't be easy, but if you're willing to work hard, I promise you'll be able to stand on your own, without anyone's pity." I thought about it a lot. I had always hated relying on the kindness of others, but I knew this was an opportunity I couldn't afford to pass up. So, I agreed. I started working at Richard's company during the day and studying at night. Life wasn't easy. Sleepless nights with 2 crying babies, exhausting days balancing work and school. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was moving forward, instead of standing still in misery. Rebecca and Matthew became my family in a way I had never imagined. They helped care for my children when I had to work, encouraged me when I felt like giving up. Richard, though not the warmest or most affectionate person, always kept his promises. Under his guidance, I learned how to navigate a professional environment, how to rebuild the confidence that had been shattered after my failed marriage. And then one day I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. No longer the weak Charlotte who depended on Ethan's love. No longer the naive girl who believed love alone was enough. I had become a strong mother, an independent woman, and most importantly, I had taken back control of my own life. As time passed, I grew more accustomed to my new routine. Work and school kept me so busy that I barely had time to dwell on the past. My children grew bigger each day, becoming my greatest source of motivation. Rebecca and Matthew remained by my side, always ready to help, and I felt luckier than ever. But there was someone else, slowly but surely, who had become an important part of my life. Matthew. At first he was simply a friend, the one who gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go, the one who quietly fixed things around the house, the one who never asked too many questions but was always there when I needed him. I don't remember exactly when I started seeing Matthew differently. Maybe it was the way he cradled my babies in his arms, gently soothing them to sleep as if they were his own. Maybe it was the nights he helped me study, patiently explaining things when I was too exhausted to concentrate. Or maybe it was the small, ordinary moments, like when he smiled kindly at me struggling with a wrinkled shirt, then wordlessly walked over to grab the iron and smooth it out. I don't know. All I know is that, little by little, the emptiness I once felt when thinking about the future started to fade. One late autumn afternoon, I took the twins to a nearby park. The maple leaves scattered across the ground, painting the path in warm hues of orange and gold. Matthew walked beside me, as he always did. "Have you ever thought about loving someone again?" he asked, his voice light, almost like a passing breeze. I turned to look at him. His expression remained calm as usual, but in his eyes I saw something new: hope, anticipation, and just a hint of nervousness. I had once believed my heart was shut forever after the pain Ethan caused, but as I looked into Matthew's eyes, I wasn't so sure anymore. "I don't know," I admitted. "I used to think I'd never believe in love again, but then, some people change, the way you see things." Matthew didn't say anything, but I noticed his fingers tighten slightly, as if he was holding something back. "I don't want to pressure you," he said slowly. "I just want you to know, if one day you're ready, I'll still be here." A warmth spread through my chest. I didn't respond right away, but deep down, I knew something had shifted inside me. Time kept moving forward. Winter came and went, bringing freezing snowfalls and long nights of holding my babies close for warmth. I continued my studies, kept working at Richard's company, and still lived with Matthew and Rebecca like a family. But I couldn't deny one truth: Matthew was no longer just a friend. He was the first person I turned to when something good happened, the one I wanted to lean on when things got tough, the person I trusted more than anyone else. And I knew that I meant just as much to him. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms bloomed along the city streets, Matthew took me out. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple walk. But when he stopped under the soft glow of a street lamp, I knew something important was about to happen. "Charlotte," he began, his voice slow and careful, as if choosing each word with great thought. "I know you've been through so much pain. I don't want to rush you, and I don't want you to feel pressured. But I love you. And I love those two little ones as if they were my own." My heart pounded in my chest. "You don't have to answer me now," Matthew continued. "I just want you to know that if you're ever ready, if you ever want to try again, I'll always be here." I looked into his eyes. There was no urgency, no expectation, only patience and sincerity. I had once believed that my love for Ethan was the strongest thing I had ever felt, that it was everything I had, but standing here on a quiet street with Matthew in front of me, I realized that real love wasn't about grand promises or fleeting passion. It was patience, it was understanding, it was choosing to stay, even when things got hard. I smiled softly. "I'm not sure if I can love again," I said gently. "But if I can, then I want to try with you." Matthew didn't say anything. He simply looked at me for a long moment before reaching for my hand, not forcefully, not urgently, just a gentle hold, as if to say he would never let go. And I knew in that moment that I would never regret this decision. In the months that followed, everything felt like a dream I never thought I would have. Matthew and I slowly became a real family. He cared for my children as if they were his own, and they loved him in a way they had never loved Ethan. I no longer thought about the past, no more pain when Ethan's name was mentioned, no more concern about Margaret. My life was now filled with a love and peace I had never known before. One day while preparing dinner with Rebecca, she suddenly smiled softly. "I've never seen you this happy before," she said. I paused, thinking for a moment, then smiled too. I've never felt this way before, I replied. And I knew, this time, my happiness was real. My life gradually fell into place. The twins grew up healthy, filling our home with laughter and warmth. Matthew was always by my side, loving and caring for them as if they were his own. I had finally completed my studies and officially became an intern at a major hospital. Step by step, reaching for the dream I once thought had slipped away forever. I no longer thought about Ethan or his family. But that didn't mean they had disappeared from my life. While I was rebuilding my future, the Smith family was falling into chaos. After I left, Margaret lost her grip on Ethan. He began drinking heavily, frequently missing work and drowning himself in gambling. The Smith family's business started to crumble. Longtime business partners lost faith in them as they watched Ethan spiral deeper into reckless decisions. Then, disaster struck. A failed business deal pushed the company into severe financial turmoil. Debts piled up, stocks plummeted, and in less than a year the Smith empire collapsed entirely. They lost their lavish mansion, their assets were seized by the bank, and their once pristine reputation was ruined. Margaret, the woman who once controlled everything, became bitter and desperate. She couldn't accept that everything she had built had been destroyed, and most of all she blamed me. One day while at the hospital I received a strange message from an unfamiliar number. "Charlotte, if you don't come back, I will make you regret it. Did you really think you could escape?" I froze as I read the words. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I knew exactly who it was. Margaret. She couldn't accept that I had walked away from their lives and was now living better than ever. But I didn't think she could do anything to scare me anymore. I had escaped them. I had a new life. I ignored the message, assuming it was just empty threats from a woman who had lost everything. I was wrong. That evening while Matthew and I were preparing dinner, my phone rang. It was the daycare. My heart clenched instantly. "Miss Charlotte, something's wrong." The teacher's voice was filled with panic. "The twins! We can't find them. Someone picked them up, but it wasn't anyone on their approved pickup list." Everything shattered in front of me. For a moment, it felt like my heart had stopped beating. "What?" My voice shook, nearly breaking into a scream. "Who picked them up?" "We don't know. A man. He said he was a representative of the family. But when we checked the records, there was no such person. We've already called the police." The phone slipped from my hands. My whole body trembled so violently that I couldn't stand. Matthew rushed to catch me, his eyes filled with horror. "Charlotte, what happened?" "The twins. They've been kidnapped." The next hours were a nightmare. The police arrived, took statements, searched for every possible lead. I knew exactly who was behind this, but there was no proof. I couldn't just sit still. While the police conducted their investigation, I called every contact I had, desperately trying to figure out where they could have taken my children. Then an anonymous call came through. "If you want to see your children again, come to this address." Alone. I didn't need to ask who it was. I ran out of the house, ignoring Matthew and the police as they tried to stop me. I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't let my children be in danger. When I arrived at the location, it was an old run-down house on the outskirts of town, dark and crumbling. The door creaked open, and there stood Margaret, her eyes filled with hatred. "I told you, Charlotte," she sneered. "You can't escape my family." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Margaret, you have no right to do this. What do you want?" She scoffed. "You know exactly what I want. You will go back to Ethan and bring my grandchildren home. Did you really think you could leave us and live happily? No. You destroyed Ethan's life. You owe us." I glanced around desperately, searching for any sign of my children. "Where are they?" Margaret gave a signal and two men stepped forward, dragging my twins into the room. They screamed the moment they saw me. My heart shattered at the sight of their terrified faces. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice as steady as possible. "I will never go back to Ethan." I locked eyes with her. "You can do whatever you want to me, but let the children go." Margaret's hands clenched into fists. "No, they are blood. They belong to this family, not to you." My breath hitched, but before I could react, the sharp wail of police sirens echoed outside. Matthew hadn't let me go alone. The men panicked. One of them bolted for the back door while Margaret screamed in rage. The police stormed in, taking control of the situation. I rushed forward, grabbing my children and holding them tightly, tears streaming down my face. Margaret was forced into handcuffs, her face twisted with fury. "You think you've won, Charlotte?" she spat. I looked at her, feeling more pity than hatred. "I never needed to win, Margaret," I said quietly. "I just wanted to live in peace, but you couldn't let me have that." She was dragged away. The police assured me that she would never have another chance to harm me or my children again. I held my children tightly, feeling their warmth as a reminder that I had reclaimed my family. And this time no one would ever take them away from me again. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched them close. Their small bodies trembled, their tiny hands gripping onto me as if letting go meant they would be taken away once more. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to suppress the rage burning inside me. Margaret, still in handcuffs, was dragged away, screaming and thrashing, her face twisted in fury, but this time, I wasn't afraid anymore. Matthew rushed to my side, kneeling beside me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Are they okay?" I nodded, though my throat was tight. "They're safe. But I can't forgive this." The police kept the scene secured, collecting statements and evidence. An officer approached me, his voice serious. "Miss Charlotte? Do you know who orchestrated this kidnapping?" I looked him straight in the eye, without hesitation. "Margaret Smith." The investigation moved swiftly. The kidnappers were arrested soon after, and some of them confessed that Margaret had hired them for a large sum of money. Police uncovered messages, phone calls, and financial transactions, proving that she had been planning this for a long time. When all the evidence was presented in court, I felt a kind of relief I hadn't known before. Margaret was charged with multiple crimes, including conspiracy to kidnap and endangering the welfare of children. But the most terrifying part was her mental state. Throughout the trial, she screamed at me, cursed me, calling me a fraudulent woman, and insisting that the children didn't belong to me. Psychiatrists determined that Margaret was suffering from severe mental instability, to the point where she could no longer control her actions. In the end, instead of being sentenced to prison, she was committed to a high secular psychiatric facility for dangerous criminals. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty. A man who once held power, wealth, and status was now locked away within 4 cold white walls, living in a world of his own. That was the price she had to pay. As for Ethan, after this scandal, he completely fell apart. The truth about the Smith family spread across the city. Headlines about a deranged wealthy mother attempting to kidnap her own grandchildren to force her ex-daughter-in-law back filled the news. Their family business, already on the brink of collapse, was buried even deeper in debt. The remaining shareholders pulled out, and Ethan's assets were frozen as authorities investigated the financial mess. With no home, no money, and no reputation left, Ethan spiraled into despair. He drowned himself in alcohol and gambling, falling into the hands of loan sharks. Rumors spread that he had mortgaged his last remaining possession, a small apartment his family had bought before their bankruptcy. But when he failed to pay off his debts, the collectors came for him, and in the end he lost everything. One day I received a call from an unknown number. "Charlotte." The voice on the other end was tired, hoarse, but I recognized it instantly. "Ethan." I gripped my phone tightly, my heart pounding. I had thought I would never hear his voice again. I didn't know who else to call." His voice trembled. I have nothing left." I closed my eyes, forcing my voice to remain steady. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I just want to see the kids," he exhaled heavily. "Just once." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately, to erase him from my life completely. But another part reminded me that no matter what, Ethan was still their biological father. I took a deep breath before answering. "I'll think about it." Then I ended the call. I didn't know if I truly wanted Ethan to see the children. But one thing I knew for certain: no matter what happened, I would never let anyone hurt them again. In the days that followed, I devoted all my time to my children. I took them to the park, to the zoo, and spent extra time holding them close every night before bed. After everything, I had almost lost them, and I didn't want to waste another second. Matthew was always by my side. He never asked about Ethan's call, never brought up what had happened, but I knew he was worried about me. One evening, as we sat on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Matthew turned to me. "Are you going to let Ethan see the kids?" I was silent for a long time. "I don't know. I don't want him to show up only to disappear again and hurt them." Matthew nodded, gently taking my hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. I looked at him, gratitude swelling in my chest. My heart had endured so much pain. But now, I had a family. I had Matthew, my 2 children, and a life I had fought to build. Ethan and Margaret were nothing more than ghosts of the past. Oh, I didn't need 'em. I had everything I needed. This spring felt different. No more haunting memories, no more fear creeping into my nights. For the first time in years, I truly felt peace within my soul. The twins were growing faster than I could believe. They laughed under the golden sunlight, running barefoot through the backyard grass, their bright eyes free of sadness. I watched them, my heart swelling with happiness and gratitude. Matthew stepped out from the back door, carrying a tray of lemonade, setting it down on the wooden table. He smiled at me, his eyes as soft and warm as ever. "You seem lost in thought," he said, pouring me a glass. I took it, running my fingers along the cool rim. "It's just, I never thought I could be this happy." Matthew didn't say anything, but he understood. He always did. When I walked away from the Smith family, I had nothing but my 2 children and a shattered heart. But now I have a home, a real family, not bound by blood but by love, a love stronger than anything I had ever known. A voice from the front gate pulled me from my thoughts. "Hope I'm not too late." I turned and smiled as I saw Scott walking in, still wearing his familiar kind smile and his slightly uneven gait. Scott, the man who had saved my children in the most terrifying moment of my life. After the kidnapping ordeal, Scott became more than just a good man who had helped me. He slowly became an irreplaceable part of our lives. He visited the kids often, taught them how to fish, played ball with them, and shared fascinating stories about nature. "Uncle Scott!" The twins squealed in excitement, sprinting toward him. Scott chuckled, crouching down and opening his arms wide. "Did you miss me?" he asked playfully, though he already knew the answer. "Yes," they shouted in unison before dragging him toward the backyard playground. I watched the scene unfold, feeling a deep sense of peace. Scott may not have been related to us by blood, but he was family, just like Matthew, just like Rebecca. I had once believed I would be alone forever, but as it turned out, family didn't have to begin with blood. The afternoon passed in waves of laughter, children's giggles, lively conversations, and the warmth of the people I loved most. After dinner, when the kids had finally drifted off to sleep, Matthew and I stepped out onto the porch, enjoying the cool spring breeze. "Do you remember the first time I came here?" I asked softly, resting my head against his shoulder. Matthew chuckled. "How could I forget? You stood at my door holding 2 babies, looking like your whole world had fallen apart." I laughed too, but this time it was a laugh of relief. "And now everything is different." Matthew squeezed my hand gently. "Yeah, now you have a new life, a new family." I nodded, tightening my grip on his hand. "I once thought I had lost everything," I murmured. "But in the end, I only lost what was never truly mine. And because of that, I found what really matters." I no longer resented Ethan. I no longer hated Margaret. They were the past, just another chapter that had closed. Now I had Matthew, I had my 2 incredible children, I had people who stood by me when I needed them the most. That was all I needed. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. After all the pain and loss, I had finally found my happiness. And this time, I would never let it slip away. Life doesn't always go the way we expect. Charlotte once believed she had found love, only to realize it was nothing more than a fragile illusion. But through her losses, she rebuilt her life, finding a true family not through blood, but through those who loved her unconditionally. Charlotte's story is proof that sometimes, loss is not the end, it is the beginning of something greater. If we are strong enough, happiness will always be waiting at the end of the road. Charlotte's journey is an emotional tale of loss, resilience, and rediscovering happiness. What do you think about her choices? Do you resonate with her journey? Share your thoughts and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about life,